Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. It's got to be smart. We got to do it the right way.
Do you believe in the mandatory buyback of quote-unquote assault weapons?
I do believe that we need to do buyback.
Now, that was just one of the many lies that Vice President Kamala Harris spewed at last night's debate. In fact, she lied so much, and former President Donald Trump became so distracted by his understandable annoyance that the entire event was, well, really little more than the culmination of the left's most sordid dreams for attacking Donald Trump. In fact, an astonishingly high number of Trump voters, 31%, believe that Kamala Harris performed better than did their candidate Donald Trump. Compare that with the meager 4% of Harris voters or supporters who believe Trump had a good debate performance. So what's with that disparity? Could this be a skewed poll? Sure. Is it all because all of the polls are rigged, or is there actually something to it? And does the debate even mean anything, as I asked you in the opening of the show? After all, as the Twitter user MV Red podcast tweeted last night, in anticipation of the post-debate polls, this is a friendly reminder of how the post-debate polls looked after each debate in 2016. Hint, Clinton ahead in all. In fact, Clinton won 62-27, according to CNN. Back in 2016, according to another poll, Clinton won 51-40%. According to the YouGov poll then, Clinton won 57-30%. And in Politico in 2016, Clinton won 49-26%. And well, we know that the media was in the tank for Harris bigly. But it might be telling that former President Donald Trump, who insisted that he'd debate anywhere at any time, apparently told Fox News that, quote, I don't know that I want to do another debate. For starters, it's probably a good sign that he doesn't do another debate, not just because Trump's performance was what most people agree was weaker than it was against Joe Biden in June, but more importantly, because Donald Trump was having to fight both Kamala Harris, as we pointed out at the top of the show, as well as the supposedly, can't even get this out because it's just so ridiculous, impartial ABC News debate moderators. Still, Donald Trump showed he was a gentleman and a patriot by showing up the very next day in New York City, along with his vice presidential running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, for a 9/11 commemoration ceremony today with none other, I know, than Vice President Harris and President Joe Biden, and even New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer. The world is definitely changing since these harrowing and heartbreaking images from 9/11 were captured 23 years ago. We may be looking at a very sad post-Trump era of U.S. politics. We may have even forgotten about the true meaning and impacts of 9/11 in that time. Join us now to decipher all of that and to ask more questions is Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports. I'm looking forward to talking to you, Mark, about not only debate, but you all also, I think, did a very important poll on the changing attitudes of Americans towards 9/11. So welcome on both this post-debate and 9/11 commemoration day.
Great to be here, and what a day it is. Unfortunately for the polling watchers, you're going to have to wait a few days to get some real numbers about the debate. To be honest, it's great that those independent panels went Trump, but that's the equivalent of like a Ouija board, basically. I don't even know if there are undecided voters anymore. I certainly wouldn't trust the mainstream media to pick them for me.
That's the question I posed. That's what I suggested in my monologue at the top of the show. Look, I don't think many people really went into this undecided. And there's not really, when you look at the amount of people in the United States, there's really not a large percentage of people who even watch the debate, right?
They always say they do, right? And so you can look at the ratings and get one answer, or you can look at what people say in the polls because they're overestimating their likelihood to watch for sure. But what is incredible is that a bad debate performance will absolutely swing the numbers among independents.
Okay.
So going into the last debate, people gave Trump the favorite. He was like up 10 points on Biden to win going into the debate. independents, it was like a 14-point advantage. After the debate, 53% more independents say that Trump won. So they saw that, watched it, and like, again, listen, maybe it's just the people answering polls, but it changed the numbers among independents in a pretty incredible way. Going into this debate, though, we had all the momentum in the polling basically coming back to Trump. All of the Kamala momentum wearing off, the numbers starting to turn in our overnight tracking. The last big poll we put out last Thursday was Trump +1, which, by the way, the New York Times validated all our work and now totally agrees with. Donald Trump is winning currently the national popular vote, which is something that you probably haven't heard in your mainstream media newspaper, right? Take it from us and the New York Times, but definitely don't take it from the ABC News. Now, the overnight numbers have been turning a little bit back towards Trump. We can get into that. But what's crazy is the Harris momentum was just destroyed by Nate Silver over the weekend. And then the poly market betting odds followed suit. And so she went to this debate, in our opinion, needing a massive win. But if you look at those numbers you put up, it's really hard to get a win now because all the Trump supporters know it's going to be unfair. They know he's not the best debater, but he's going to get those zingers in. They're going to get clipped up and spread all over the internet. And then the Kamala Harris people, what they wanted out of this debate is, in my opinion, just to be told by people on the talking box that she is a paragon of policy genius. And that's exactly what they're being told right now. And it almost looks like everybody should go to Nate Silver's Twitter feed because it looks like he's trying to give himself the mental cover to totally just rejigger his model and start swinging the momentum back towards Kamala Harris. It's crazy. Based on one night. Yeah, go ahead.
Did I see that Nate Silver had Trump winning, had the predictability of Trump winning 65% or something?
Yeah, I mean, this all gets back to ABC, who is absolutely scummy mainstream media. I think they're probably the worst ones. Right now, there's 7 points left of us and the New York Times. And they're doing it through really underhanded polling tactics. And these are the same people that kicked us out of 538 just so that they can make the Democrat numbers look better. And they're taking all of the polling data and moving it even further left when what they're supposed to be doing is to compensate for the leftward biases in the polling industry. Those are the people that ran the debate last night and absolutely beclowned themselves. And they fired Nate Silver, last year. I think he's really trying to be objective. But the problem is when you have a black box model with 50 different variables that he sets himself or whatever it is, maybe you start creating the signal you want to see instead of the actual signal. So if you look at my numbers, what they would say is that 2 months ago, Donald Trump was the odds-on absolute favor to win like 99-1 because he was up 5 points, right? And his lead is narrowed. It's down to, let's call it 2 or 3 points right now. So my odds for Trump have been going kind of down. In Nate Silver's model for the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've been soaring up through the stratosphere.
Yeah. How
do you take polling data and get a signal that's the exact opposite of the polls? Now, what I think is that Donald Trump's going to open back up a lead. What Nate Silver's probably going to show is Kamala Harris coming from behind. So it's a dark art.
Did you see what Nate Silver put out today? Like literally today in the Silver Bulletin, he has on the probability of the Electoral College, Trump is 61.6%, and Harris is 38.1%.
Yeah, I think he had Trump as over 65 sometime in the last few days.
So it's down a little bit. Okay. He did. He had him at 65% at one point.
I think he's going to take her back up. Now, if you look at, poly market, the betting markets aren't the best predictor of election outcomes, but I do think they show you a quick knee-jerk reaction about how people respond to events. And what happened here is Trump was up 6 points. The next day he's up 1, and he's probably going to reclaim where he was. And so it's a blip. The debate was a blip when, in my opinion, she needed to seriously derail Trump somehow. And I don't think she got that.
So let me tell you, let's talk about what you found overnight. You just had sent us some of the numbers that you got overnight. So tell us about these and what we're looking at.
All right, the last data point here was collected as of 8:20 last night. So this is all pre-debate numbers, but these are our individual nightly responses. Nobody else in the industry is doing this. New York Times is only polling once a month now. They literally go out into the field 2 days a month. This is like a hotly contested election season, we're the only ones polling daily, and you can see the numbers here, and it doesn't really match what the fake narratives in August said. Trump was up big. We just after she was selected, we started doing this, and it flip-flopped for a little bit. But Trump's pretty much been, 49. He dipped a little bit during the DNC. He's back up to 49. We're looking at the dotted line, right? The margin of error here is huge. They're small samples. It's plus or minus 5. But it's still useful data because you're getting a trace. So now she came out with initial momentum. It sort of degraded some. And then during the week or two in the DNC, she gained a point or two, got up to 46, 47. But that's kind of her ceiling now. And Trump's had some +6, +5 nights. And tomorrow night, we're going to take the last 4 data points and combine them into one poll. And that's like, 6, 3, 5, that's 14. Let's say he gets another, 4 or 5. We're talking about a 3-point race here. Now, let's see where New York Times goes. I think they lean left. I think their data looks more leftward leaning than us. But, okay, there'll be a point or two left. And in any case, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong because of Donald Trump popular vote win, barring every pipe in the world breaking simultaneously.
Which might happen, let's be honest.
It might. I think there's going to be hijinks that we haven't even dreamed of in Pennsylvania right now.
I think so, too.
Yeah. It comes
and
down
that's
to
hard to factor for. How long before you get how many days would you say it takes before you'll have your polling? Because I'm very interested to see what you all see post debate. Because I'll be honest, I'm talking to every kind of person out there, right? I'm talking to independents. I'm talking to Democrats who feel disillusioned, who feel like they have no home, who are open to voting for Donald Trump. I'm talking to Trump supporters that are like diehard. So every kind of voter you can imagine, I'm pretty much talking to. And there's some really interesting mixed reactions last night, and some I didn't expect. Of course, this is all anecdotal because these are conversations I'm having, but some diehard Trump supporters are like, oh, this was really bad. It was really bad. Some are like, oh, I think you did pretty good. And some independents are like, oh, yeah, I thought Trump was okay. I mean, it's literally all across the board. So I really look forward to seeing, because I trust your polling, where you having after the debate. So how long will it be before we get that?
Yeah, I think that all tells you it's a wash, because social media, in my opinion, among people who are open-minded, is a consensus-seeking device. And I don't think there is a consensus. So I don't think I'm really going to see much, if anything, in the numbers. But the first data point comes back tomorrow night or tomorrow morning. And then on Friday morning, we'll have 2 data points. And then by Sunday, it'll be 3. That's more or less about 1,000 likely voters. So that's a real quote unquote poll. And then we're also going to put debate retrospective questions into the field over the weekend. Got to figure out what to ask, open to suggestions. Probably it's going to be a set about bias in the mainstream media. And I'm hoping to get a bigger record of more voters than ever saying that media is the enemy of the people. It sits at 60% right now.
Well, after last night, you should certainly see that, shouldn't you? It was not a fair fight. It was certainly 3-on-1. I do want to get to another very important poll you did in commemoration of today's 9/11 anniversary. What you put out, the latest Rasmussen Reports National Telephone and Online Survey finds that 48% of likely U.S. voters believe many Americans have forgotten the impact of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, up slightly from 45% in 2021 to 35% disagree that their fellow citizens have forgotten the horrors of the attack by the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda. You found that 70%, are just not sure. So, I mean, it's interesting. I just had a conversation with someone today, and they're like, oh, well, are we still talking about this? And I thought, wow, that's such a change from where everyone seemed to be, a decade ago. So what do these numbers tell us, Mark?
More than just election horse races, in my opinion, I think public opinion officials have a duty to tell Americans what other Americans think and report on public opinion in America. And this is one of the things that we're doing that really nobody else is. It's a fascinating thing to study, because back in 2001, I think was the height of American consensus in my living memory for sure. And it's almost like every year that passes, we've lost the ability to have consensus. Now, unfortunately, I also think that consensus was misused by the Bush administration, but that's just my own personal opinion. Even Trump entered office to higher initial approval ratings than Joe Biden did. Joe Biden barely got above 50%. But here in this poll still, there were some questions where there was complete bipartisan agreement. Do you remember where you were when you heard the news about 9/11? 87% of Republicans, 87% of Democrats. Which is a bigger threat now to the U.S., attack from outside the country or domestic terrorist attack? Democrats and Republicans all agree on that. They think it's a domestic terror attack. But the one question you picked out was the one where there was a party signal. Have many Americans forgotten about the impact of the 9/11 terrorist attacks? A plurality say yes, and I think it's because of the period of disillusionment that we live in. There are Americans that want to dehumanize each other and deperson each other and have invested so heavily in different realities. And the Democrats, only 37% of them said yes, but the Republicans, 57% of them said yes. Maybe it's the conservative mind is different than the progressive mindset, but that's a pretty big signal when everything else was bipartisan. And then, of course, we had to turn it political. Donald Trump has a 9-point advantage over Kamala Harris on trust to protect America from a terrorist attack. But where we're at now, the economy's not as big of a deal.
Repeat that. How much was that? What was that again on the trust over Joe? Because that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next segment.
Thinking of the presidential election, which candidate would you trust more to protect America from a terrorist attack? And Donald Trump wins almost all of these, but he wins on this one too, 52% to 43%. This is a tough one for her because Joe Biden did do better on the national security, foreign policy, those kind of questions. They both do equally bad on the economy and the border, but she, again, in this way is worse than Joe Biden. And I guess we'll see where the roulette wheel takes us because there's all of these issues and Democrats have advantage on some, Republicans on the other. And I don't know over the next 2 months what's going to be foremost in people's minds. They say the economy now, but what does that really mean? Inflation is kind of backed off. If the stock market crashes, who knows what we'll see? If the rates get cut, who knows what we'll see? If there's another terrorist attack, who knows what we'll see? And ultimately might just come down to we're going to spend the next 2 months where we're at now, which again is Donald Trump winning the national popular vote, unlike any other time that he's had in the last 8 years.
Who knows what we will see in the next 2 months? I think that's probably exactly what we can expect or what sums it up. Thank you so much, Mark Mitchell. I'm glad we had some more time today. We had a lot to go through. Thanks for joining us. And remember, you can always catch Mark on YouTube for more on these numbers and other issues that matter to Americans. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.